A lot definitely occurred in markets today. We had Jerome Powell speaking. We have things going on in the Middle East. We have oil flaring up. Let's take these pieces of information, these events that are occurring, one by one, dissect them, look at them, analyze them, and go from there. So let's start with Jerome Powell speaking. This is the Big Daddy Fed doing the Big Daddy things. My ultimate take is that there is nothing for the Doves or the Hawks to run away with. The theme is that the future is uncertain. However, the one thing that does seem pretty clear is that for the people who think they can have their cake and eat it too, meaning that the Fed can just get inflation under control and the economy can continue to be strong at this rate, that is not something the Fed is going to do. Why do or allow to have happen? Why do I think that? If inflation comes down, shouldn't the Fed just back off and be happy with that outcome? If you notice today, when Powell talked about having to do more hikes, it wasn't if inflation rebounds, if inflation comes back, if we see another spike. It was if economic growth continues above trend. It was these kinds of things. It was talking about the economy that led the Federal Reserve to say we might not be done. It doesn't mean that if economic growth is strong right now or if this next GDP print is strong right now that they're going to hike, because they're also very conscious of the lags. The idea is you can't have your cake and eat it too. That should be accepted. We need to have, in their words, a sustained period of below trend growth. They need people to feel it in the wallet a little bit. Obviously, I don't want to feel it in my wallet, okay? I get it. I'm with you there. But they need the general people who use the dollar to feel a little bit of dollar scarcity, just a little bit, so that they don't go out and engage in excessive demand, which is what has prompted inflation. They stay in their jobs. They look for jobs. They want to work and get some money. These kinds of things. They need just a little bit, a little dose of pain to essentially kick everybody in the butt a little bit. Not too much. They don't want too much. But to make people get that feeling again in their eyes. They need some below trend growth. That we're not going to go straight back to sunshines and rainbows. We're not going to go straight back to 2021. That's their biggest fear. And that's exactly what the market at times has done. That's what it's done periodically. You look at when the SVB happened, when those banks failed in March, it was back to 2021 vibes all over again. Yields coming down, Fed's gone too much, they're going to have to start cutting by the end of the year, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. They really want to, I'm just the messenger here. They want to quash that. We can't have our cake and eat it too. We are going to need a period of below trend growth. Whether or not we get another hike, in my opinion, one more hike is pretty irrelevant. Pretty much doesn't matter. The long end of the curve has moved up substantially more than 25 basis points since the last Fed meeting, in which higher for longer was a clear takeaway from that. And that's what matters most. Now, they're also saying that might do some of the work for them. That is probably the best thing, because if the long end can just go up, that's really where economic tightening, which is what their goal is right now. That's their goal. Don't hate the messenger. Hate the message if you want. That's their goal. They can have that happen without deposits making more money on deposits. Okay, yes, they know that they're doing that. They know that they're increasing deposit returns or whatever, but they would rather not have to do it if they don't have to, and they can still have the same kind of effect. So this is for the Doves, possibly a small thing that they might take away. Anyways, whether or not we get one more hike, unsure. I don't really have a theory either way. My theory is I don't care. Doesn't matter to me. I don't think it's going to make any difference at this point based on what I'm seeing, based on what's happening on the long end. And my interpretation of the Fed is we can't have our cake and eat it too. We can't expect sustained above trend economic growth like we're having or had last quarter, and the Fed to be confident they're done hiking. Obviously, they're going to hike in real terms as inflation continues to fall, and they've talked about this. Even the ones that didn't want to hike at the last meeting, or the last 2 meetings ago or whatever, say the same thing. So, that's the Fed. The next thing is what's happening in the Middle East. And the big pivot point that I'm very, very happy about personally is the idea that Saudi Arabia is condemning Hamas. They are putting some heat on Hamas. I think this is a very, very good shift that is occurring. What's going on here? Why do we read into this so much? One step at a time. Saudi Arabia, big country. They have the Islamic cube, the pilgrimage cube. I don't know the exact name, but they have it. Very important player in the Islamic world. Prior to Hamas invading Iran, apparently there were very close talks, close to concluding talks, between Israel and Saudi Arabia to have some sort of recognition, have some sort of peace, have some sort of truce, and some sort of just agreement. I don't know the exact specifics of it. I knew that it was occurring. I heard that it was occurring. This would be a good thing. I believe Saudi Arabia and Israel have had a commercial flight. I know Israel and the UAE have had a commercial flight. So in some areas of the Middle East, things are becoming a little bit more modern. I'm not talking on a cultural basis. I'm purely talking on a geopolitical basis. That is the point of this rant. Then, as the deal was getting close, Hamas mysteriously decided to attack. And whether or not they were backed by Iran, my theory is yes, very much so. However, nobody has been willing to come out and say that or identify evidence of that. Or maybe they don't have any. I don't know. But there's always the kind of front view, and then there's a little bit of slightly back view in war, in politics. Sometimes, not always. Sometimes you will just be straight up. Trump, obviously, most of the time, was straight up. Some of these other people, not always 100%. Sometimes they have other people that they don't want to piss off too much. And that's exactly what we saw. So once Hamas attacked Israel, Saudi had to stick with kind of these more violent sects of the Middle East, of the Islamic world, because they are this important Islamic power, this Islamic country. They don't want to cause such aggressive rifts with their cousins, essentially. However, once the hospital attack occurred, and I'm not saying this was necessarily the catalyst, but it allowed them to kind of do this shift. Once the hospital attack occurred, they did blame Israel, but they said it was more like a heinous crime that had occurred. They kind of left it a little open-ended. So now that we have the truth, unless you're willing to deny the videos and the IDF, who, and think about this for a second, unless you're not willing to do that, which I understand people are not, and people can think that about me sometimes. But, Saudi Arabia has now seen that, and that has kind of given them cover. My read on it is to do condemning of Hamas. That finally, it's now time to say you guys are a little violent. Why am I just going on this rant? I'm going on this rant because you may see some stuff about a U.S. warship intercepting a Houthi rebel group rocket. The Houthis, like Hamas, like Hezbollah, are backed by Iran. Iran and Saudi Arabia, up until the last couple weeks or so, when they had their first conversation on the phone ever or some crazy thing like that, were pretty much enemies. So the Houthis shoot a missile. Unclear if it was at Saudi Arabia, who they're always fighting. which is why Saudi Arabia might be wanting to establish some, allies with strong powers in the Middle East, get focused on some peace or something. Anyways, the United States comes in with the warship through the Strait of Hormuz, which is kind of, going up past, Ethiopia, Saudi Arabia, into this area of Egypt. This is an interesting thing. And intercepts that missile. Okay? This is an unnecessary maneuver. This did not necessarily need to occur. Let's not forget, there are already ships to the west of Israel. The biggest threat is to the north. This is a ship coming in from the south. So what is my read on this situation? This is my read that Saudi Arabia is trying to reestablish truce, ties, communication, whatever you want to call it, with the United States, who is their ally, and Israel, potentially. Or at least not be so hostile like they've had to be the past couple weeks. That is a good and very interesting development. Now, Saudi Arabia might also have some political ties with China, so I'm not trying to say it's all sunshines and rainbows here. What I am saying is, what we want is peace. We don't want Iran to be this rogue nation that wants nuclear weapons, that tries to kill a lot of people, that funds terrorist groups. We want a kind of counterbalance of power there that can hopefully work to keep some peace. And having Saudi Arabia and the United States and Israel, I'm not saying we want the United States in the Middle East. We don't live there. But, we're there now. We have to be there now because our good friend Israel is getting attacked. If we can give them a good friend, or at least an ally that has the same kind of peace goals, which I think Saudi Arabia does. I don't think they want to kill lots of people. I don't think that's their goal. I think their goal is to develop their country and welcome in tourists who want to go check out an interesting part of the world and just be peace-bearing people and do their own thing inside their own borders. So it's a good possible development that is probably in the early stages, but definitely notable that a U.S. ship is going up in through there. So far, nothing too crazy going on in oil. Yes, there was a U.S. military base by a ConocoPhillips field that is getting attacked. Now we're starting to get into possibly things impacting oil. To this point, there hasn't been a lot yet. It's been a little bit of a fear trade, but it's not just assets being blown up that will contribute to the price of oil rising. It's a broader supply-demand deficit. So I don't know if things are going to happen, but I had previously said when the war broke out that I didn't think this was going to impact the price of oil. I'm not saying it is yet. What I'm saying is now there looks like there's some deliberate targets of oil assets which might affect some things. Nothing yet, though, but we're on watch. That's today's video, and until next time, peace out.